Hello, everybody. Welcome to Thursday night. That means it's going to be the Hammer and Nail show, and it would probably help out if Jack got his stuff together and put the right banner up on for us here to start off with, because this is the Hammer and Nail show, not the Jack Hammer show. Let me get that ready for you guys. There you go. Look at that. We look so much better with that one too, doesn't
it? Way better.
How you doing tonight, Jesse?
I'm doing fantastic, Jack. It is the off season, which means rumors are running rampant all over the league, and we get to talk about it. Nothing better.
Yeah, it's definitely this week, especially with Super Bowl week. It usually seems like there's always some good juicy rumors that come out, and there was definitely a few that have hit this week. One of the things that I know we want to talk about to kind of get started was, Super Bowl week brings about a lot of interviews with different players, and past and present. And today, one of the 49ers past greats went on an interview, and the discussion came up on Trey Lance. And what did you hear there?
Yeah, I mean, basically, Joe Montana said that he believes, and in talking to current 49ers players that, or people within the locker room, that Trey Lance is not ready. Trey Lance is not ready to start, and that they should either keep Jimmy for another year or do some sort of bridge quarterback to give him that extra year of sitting, is basically where he was coming from on that, which I find interesting. Let's kind of go back a little bit. Let's peel back the onion, because at the beginning of the year, I remember Steve Young was very pro Lance starting and all of that. And Joe Montana said that he preferred the kid from Alabama, Mac Jones. And so really he's kind of been against Lance a little bit the whole way. And this, to me, is not a surprise. I think a lot of, I would imagine that a lot of people are up in arms about it. It's the best quarterback in 49ers history, making an opinion about the quarterback. And, I think that holds a lot of credence in people's minds. And so, but the timing is so fantastic.
Yeah, it definitely is. And my take on this is that Joe's 100% correct when he says the 49ers should have taken Mac Jones. Mac Jones is going to win the NFL Rookie of the Year here in the next couple hours, most likely. We know he just got done playing in the Pro Bowl. If you get a chance to check out the Mac Jones mic'd up clip, that's pretty good too. No, but enough of Mac Jones. I don't know on this thing with where Montana is coming from. I don't know if Trey Lance necessarily needs to sit another year, or if he's going to be ready to play. I have a feeling that he's going to be ready if it's the direction that the 49ers decide to go, and it seems to be that's the path that they've kind of set themselves on. So I think that Lance will be fine if it calls for it. So we'll see what happens. I mean, as you mentioned, he did say though that it might be good for the 49ers to bring in somebody to kind of bridge the gap again, whether it be Jimmy Garoppolo or another veteran quarterback. And just so happens that there was a veteran quarterback that started talking this week. Again, Super Bowl week brings about great things. And it was Tom Brady going on his podcast and being asked the question if he'd come back, and saying, "I'm not sure, but never say never." And with those three words, the internet lit up.
Yeah, absolutely. Real quick, just to put a bow on the Joe Montana thing, I think, again, a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, if Joe Montana is saying it, it must be true. But let's not forget that great players are not always great talent evaluators. Michael Jordan is exhibit A for that. So let's not go off the rails here and think that, oh, because he said it, then that must be true. And I know it happens a lot. I'll post players saying things that agree with what I say and vice versa. But nobody truly knows, right? Until we see the kid. And I think the only way for him to get ready at this point is to actually play. But yeah, so here's Tom Brady possibly falling in the laps of the 49ers again. And this one's interesting to me because how do you say no to arguably the greatest quarterback of all time, right? Like, who might be coming off of his best year of his career, by the way, at 44 years old. You've already said no to him once. I don't know, man. I'm kind of in between on this one, and I'll lay out the scenario. It's not just Tom Brady. Like, it's not, hey, you get Tom Brady or Trey Lance. It's not that simple because there's a few moving parts here. First of all, if you take on Tom Brady, what's his salary is around 20 mil this year, would it not be, or am I off on that?
You're off based off of the way that it's set up. It would be about 10.94 million, because the only piece that would go with him would be the roster bonus and the base salary. The other stuff stays with uh, as part of the dead cap for Tampa Bay, that they're going to deal with it regardless.
Yeah, they'll have to deal with it. Okay, well, let me ask you this because I was always under the impression that you can, when you're making trades, you can make a trade however you want. Like, meaning you could say, hey, listen, like, we're not going to eat any of his dead cap. Like, you have to take at least this year's cap with him. Can you do that or no?
I'm sure that I don't know what the rules are when it comes to the trading as far as um, that goes. I think it's possible. It should be possible that you have to take a portion of their salary. That's what I mean. We know that they've done that. The teams have done that in the NFL before, so you would think that that could be something that Tampa Bay might want to try to do if they were going to offload Brady for whatever reason.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that those things are, I mean, that's very significantly different, right? If it's 20 million versus 10 million, that changes things a lot. But
Mm-hmm.
let's assume it's, they meet in the middle, 15 million, whatever. Either way, if you're bringing in Brady, that's more money than what you planned on spending for the backup quarterback. So you're going to forego a player. Who that player is, I don't know. It could be DJ Jones. It could be Arden Key. It could be Lake and Tomlinson. Who knows? But you're going to forego a player there. And you're going to set back Lance for another year, which is, fine. If you win a Super Bowl, it's a lot of pressure, but you basically have to win a Super Bowl in that scenario. And the other part of this is Jimmy G is most likely a part of that. Now, why Tampa would want him, I'm not sure, but I just don't think he fits with what they need to do. But let's assume now he's part of the deal. If that's the case, maybe Jimmy was worth a second, maybe he was worth a third, but now you're foregoing that trade as well because you're trading him to bring in Brady. So it's not just as simple as Brady or Lance. It's Brady versus Lance, whatever you can get for Jimmy and possibly another player. So that's how I look at it. Now, what's the right answer? Gosh, I don't know. It's hard to say no to Tom Brady. But again, you have to win a Super Bowl. Like, there is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And we're going to talk about Lance in a minute and what the expectations should be for him. If it's Tom Brady, you have to win a Super Bowl. Like, there's no other option. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think this is obviously that the question says Tom Brady or Trey Lance, and it's really not. The only reason to be Tom Brady or Trey Lance is who would you rather have start for the 49ers in 2022. So that's the only way it goes there, because regardless, Trey Lance is going to be on the 49ers. You're not asking for which one you want to have on the team. Um, and there's a whole lot of things that have to go into this, right? They've got Tampa Bay's got to want to trade him to the 49ers in their own conference, which you can make easy arguments as to why they wouldn't want to do that. And there's a lot of reasons that all of the questions really revolve around Tampa Bay with Tampa. And you're right at the beginning. The this whole thing came up because of obviously what Brady said, never say never about coming back. And then, the 49ers had tried to, he was interested, and he expressed interest in coming to the 49ers in 2020, and they said no, they were going to stick with Garoppolo. And so Scott Zolak went on the TV out there and said he could see it making sense for Brady to be a 49er to finish off his career. So that's where this whole thing came from. It's a whole lot of speculation. My whole thing is, if you have the chance to get Tom Brady, you don't make the same mistake that you made in 2020. You absolutely positively have to go and get them. You owe that to your organization, I think. And if you can do that and play around with the cap a little bit, because obviously as part of that, I think part of that whole scenario is trading Jimmy Garoppolo to Tampa Bay, because that makes sense because Tampa Bay wants to win and they want a winner. I was hoping I'd get a reaction out of you there. And then,
Caught me a
secondly,
little off guard. It took me a second to catch up with that
and
one.
then, but and so that's part of it, right? So you're trading Garoppolo to Tampa for the rights to Brady, hoping that he's going to come out of retirement plus a draft pick. That's kind of the way that I've seen it be kind of thrown out there. That's one of the scenarios. So if like for the 49ers, if you can get the rights to Tom Brady and maybe you get a third round, fourth round draft pick in 2023 or something like that on the back end of it, it could be a win-win kind of a deal for the 49ers, and it could be a win-win deal for the Bucks because they get a quarterback and they only have to lose one pick kind of thing. As far as Brady or Lance, yeah, I mean that's I don't think there's really, I think it's a pretty much a no-brainer. Tom Brady had, like you just said, he had one of his best careers of his best seasons of his career last year. 5,300 yards, 43 touchdowns, both leading the NFL. I'm pretty sure if he was playing with the 49ers in 2021, the 49ers win the Super Bowl or are playing on Sunday instead of watching it, because he doesn't miss the throws that Garoppolo missed. And I like I said in the beginning, I feel like Trey Lance is going to have a good season in 2022 if he's the starting quarterback. But still, Tom Brady, Tom Brady's Tom Brady, and he's still
Yeah.
playing at a high level. He's not Tom Brady at 45 isn't like where Peyton Manning was at the end of his career in Denver. He's still a viable NFL quarterback that can go out and win games for you without, instead of needing the defense to do it for you. So there's a lot of things. There's obviously a lot of moving parts that would have to work out in the 49ers' favor for this even to really be a realistic possibility. But I think if you had the opportunity, I think you need to take it and not screw it up for the second or third time, depending on how you want to look at that with Brady.
Yeah, for sure. Well, the reason you didn't get a reaction from me, oddly enough, is because I was looking up that Peyton Manning, what year he went to Denver. Because if you remember, like this whole Lance and Garoppolo thing is really starting to mirror the Alex Smith and Kaepernick thing more than ever. Because remember, Peyton Manning almost came to San Francisco. It was between the 49ers and the Broncos, and they just couldn't make it happen. But that was in 2012. And so that would have pushed back, at that point it would have been Alex Smith, but eventually it would have been Kaepernick for a couple years. So just very interesting dynamics here. I mean, again, it's impossible to say no to Tom Brady. I'm the biggest Trey Lance guy in the world. I obviously want him to start. I don't. I think this is probably more rumor than anything because Tom Brady said, "Well, I don't know what's going to happen in 6 months." Well, in 6 months, that ship sailed, bud. Like that, you would have to say something now, right? Like they can't wait 6 months and build around Trey and get rid of Jimmy and do all the things they want to do. And then last minute, right before training camp, make things happen. Like I just don't think it'll work that way.
No, it's not, but that's why the thought is that it's the 49ers trading Garoppolo for the rights to Brady and getting a draft pick back, because there's no guarantee that Brady's going to want to come. So they're doing all this maneuvering, not knowing if he's going to come for sure. But if he does, then that's great. You just go ahead and you know what I mean? It's like all of a sudden he shows up in June, and he's the starting quarterback, and Trey Lance is back to the bench. So I understand where you're coming from, and definitely I don't think that's something that they're going to want to do either. So
Did
given the kind
you
of the,
you watched the Joe Montana documentary thing? Yeah.
I've only seen the first episode.
Okay. Well, throughout that whole thing, Tom Brady is clearly fanboying out. He's in it multiple times, and if they somehow made the trade like right now in hopes that maybe he comes back, he would come back. I guarantee he would come back. Like that's I don't see him saying no to that scenario. So I don't know, man. It's it's kind of crazy to even consider this.
Oh no, it totally is, but it's a fun one. It's this is the perfect time of the year for a discussion like this, and I know 49er fans. It's funny because they say that they don't want to talk about quarterbacks and they don't want to talk about Tom Brady, just based on the tweets that I got, and then you look at the way the reactions are in terms of these shows or views on a website, those types of things. And when you talk about Tom Brady and Trey Lance, what do you think happens? People want to see about it. They say they don't want to, but they do it. It's like a train wreck, right? They tell you they don't want to look, they can't look, but they all need to slow down and at least take a peek.
Oh, that's all I heard all season about the Jimmy Trey Lance thing. Is like we're tired of it. I'm like, oh, word, because every time I title it with one of these two, my views are double. So are we sure we're tired of it? I don't think we're tired of it.
Yeah, I mean, and I understand where a lot of people are coming from with it over the course of the season because it became pretty clear at one point that it wasn't going to happen with him taking over. And we're still at the beginning of this whole thing. And I agree with the people that are saying that's not going to happen. You're probably right. It's probably not
But
going to happen.
maybe.
But hey, Tom's the one that said it. Never say never. I mean, that's really where it comes down to.
Yep.
And thank you, Tom, for giving uh, everybody across the country something to talk about for a couple of days. It just took us a couple of days before we could get on here to talk to each other.
Right.
And then, one of the things that you and I have had a conversation about, and this is switching gears over to another topic, was the standard for Trey Lance. And um, I think this came up because I was telling you last week after the show. I think it's going to be fun to watch the way people discuss Trey Lance in 2022 if he is the starting quarterback, and we all expect him to be the starting quarterback of the 49ers. The folks that have been ripping on Jimmy Garoppolo, are they going to hold that same kind of expectation of play when it comes to Trey Lance, or are they all of a sudden going to be giving them the benefit of the doubt if things don't go the way that they're supposed to go, and things like that? That's something that I know you and I have talked about, and I had that conversation with Rob Shue over on his channel when we did a show together a couple of weeks ago. So I thought you had mentioned you thought it'd be fun to talk about.
Yeah, I do. I think it'd be very fun to talk about because I think it can be a little bit of both. And here's what I mean. I think it's only fair to hold him accountable based off of how he's playing. Period, point blank. Like you have to look at what he's doing and be honest in what you're seeing and talk about that. Like if you're not doing that, then you're not being true to the process, good or bad, right? Like that's what you should do if you want to remain unbiased. So that should be the standard for anybody. If you're going to talk about these subjects, you're willing to hold Jimmy accountable like I was. I have to also be willing to hold Trey accountable. But the flip side of that is I can also say, hey, this is where he's messing up. I fully expect that's something that he can and will fix. Right? These are things he needs to work on. This is where he's not doing so hot, but eventually I expect him to fix it. That would be my expectation. With Jimmy, it was like, this is what he's not doing well. This is what he's always not done well. And so now we're in, year 3 of him getting some good playing time and he's still not doing it well. The guy's 30 years old. It's probably never going to happen for him. So, like the conversation, how you end the conversation is different, but the actual conversation should not change. You know what I mean? You have to call it how you see it, one way or another, and I think that that's the only fair thing to do.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And this is a conversation I know we had, kind of this conversation back. I think maybe even before the season started, with regards to Lance and Garoppolo, but for sure now, because you're looking at a guy who's going to be Lance isn't going to be a rookie. He's going to be a second year quarterback in the NFL. He did have 2 starts as a rookie, and the only reason I even bring that up is because when if you look at Jimmy Garoppolo, we're going to go back and forth on Garoppolo and Lance here for a minute. When you talk about Garoppolo, you hear a lot. Well, he's in his 8th season, of course he should. But when then you look back and you peel back, he hasn't played 8 seasons worth of games. He's only played about 3. And so the conversation is that Trey Lance is a second year quarterback. That's how it needs to be. And then in terms of their play, absolutely, it's what you see on the field, and there really doesn't have to be anything else that's discussed. That's the way that that I've always. That's why I laugh when people tell me that I'm a Jimmy Garoppolo lover, because I've always been the same guy. I've said when Jimmy Garoppolo plays good, I've said he's playing good. When he makes bad plays, I showed the bad plays, and it's going to be the same. I feel like I've done the same thing with Trey Lance in the two games, when he's played this season, the games that he played, and I hope that at least when people watch what I'm having to say and what I'm writing, that they don't see a difference in one or the other. The only way that they would is if he's playing really bad, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's again, like I said, you just if you want to remain credible, you you have to be honest about the situation. You just do. Like I said, how you end it, that's up to you. Like obviously the hope is that he gets better and those things change, but at that time, like you have to be real about it. I do want to address a couple comments in here if you don't mind.
Sure.
Um, Jay Jonas says, "Damn, the worst part of the year because y'all come up with these leads and storylines. What's truly going nowhere? Can we talk about some realistic ish?" Well, listen. Here's the thing: we didn't come up with the storyline. Like I want to be clear about that. But you're talking about a guy in Tom Brady who said that he wanted to end his career in San Francisco. He tried to do it 2 years ago. He was just on the Joe Montana documentary, being a fanboy, just like we are of this team. And also saying, well, never say never. And then you've got people who know him coming out and saying, well, if the 49ers came calling, that would be the only way he'd come out of retirement. So I don't I don't think it's gonna happen, but I also don't, to be fair, like I don't think that it's a non-story either. Like you have to talk about it. Because what if it does happen? Let's say it's a 10% chance, 5% chance. If it happens and we didn't talk about it, then it's like, well, where were you? Why didn't you talk about this? So you have to talk about it. And yes, it is. I will agree with this though, Jay. It's definitely a weird time of year. A lot of rumors are out there. There's rumors about Saquon Barkley being on the 49ers radar, uh, big time wide receivers, like a lot of things that just don't line up or make sense. But tis the season.
Absolutely, that's part of what it is, and you're right. If we didn't at least take some time to discuss it, we're not doing our due diligence as far as these are stories that are out there, and we can talk about them. Neither one of us really feel like it's going to happen, like Tom Brady's going to become a 49er, but crazier things have happened, and if the opportunity comes up, the 49ers shouldn't pass it up. And I think that's all we're saying. We're not saying that it's a done deal, and it's just a fun conversation. I've had so many people tell me that the 49ers should stick with Trey Lance. And I just want to reach back out to him and say, you're making the same mistake that I made 2 years ago. So don't do that.
Yeah,
That's really,
don't.
no,
Well, and I don't. I mean,
but and then
again, at that time, Jack, and I obviously wasn't around 49ers Twitter and all that at that time, so I don't know what your stance was, or even if you really put a lot of like film watching into it. But I specifically remember the Super Bowl. I remember when those rumors started, and I thought at that time, like, nah, there's no way Tom Brady would come here. Well, it turns out he wanted to come here. I did think if Tom Brady did want to come here, that they should go after him. I watched the Titans playoff game. I saw how those receivers got no separation. I saw that he had plenty of zip on the ball. I thought he had something left or more than what Jimmy could offer, but I didn't think it was possible. And then to come out, once he went to Tampa, that it was not only possible, but it was a lock if the 49ers had just said yes. It's like, well, man, like you can't just sweep this under the rug and say it's nothing.
right. No, you can't. You need to give it its due diligence, and then kind of like what his point here about coming up with storylines and things like that. I'm going to throw this comment up from KW2421 because I think it goes along with it. If Jimmy wants to stay for another season, he has to take a pay cut, and the reason I say you need to talk about this one is Mike Florio going on the radio in the Bay Area yesterday saying that he thinks the 49ers could possibly keep Jimmy Garoppolo for another year. And I know this is something that I've told you a number of times, and I actually had somebody when I threw out the Tom Brady thing yesterday, I had somebody tell me that it was that I was getting hot take-ish because that said the 49ers should get him if they could, on the heels of me saying that the 49ers were in salary cap trouble. But this is something that I've told you a couple of times on this program, and I know that I said it over with other folks as well. If there is a way for Garoppolo to stay with the 49ers if he is willing to take a pay cut or a restructured deal to lower his cap number for this year to about $8 million. Is that going to happen? Again, like Jay just said, probably not. And especially after you watch the 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 information from the last press conference, excuse me, from Jimmy Garoppolo, where he said goodbye to everybody. I mean, it's not going to happen, but that doesn't mean that people aren't talking about it, which then turns it into a conversation for us to have.
Yep, exactly. You're
Yeah.
100% right about that.
Yeah, and I just it'll be fun to watch. And as far as the standard of Lance, yeah, his standard is that he's a pro quarterback, and he's an NFL quarterback. The 49ers gave up 3 first-round draft picks for him, and you watch him and you grade him just like you would grade any other quarterback, regardless of how long they've been around. And that's what you said
Exactly.
as well. So,
Yep.
um, and then today talking about stuff that's going on around the 49ers. We had some coaching staff. Another change to the 49ers coaching staff with first off this morning, Mike McDaniel held his first press conference as the head coach of the Miami Dolphins, which I tweeted out that if I could listen, I'm going to miss listening to Mike McDaniel talk on a regular basis because I just love the way the guy talks about football. He talks about leadership, coaching, all that stuff. I really enjoy that. But now he goes and he takes away Wes Welker today. Now that's the 6th coach that the 49ers have lost this offseason. So they on the and pretty much they've all been on the offensive side of the ball. They lost two assistant offensive line coaches. One of them went back to Kentucky to the college ranks. Another one went over and became the offensive line coach. Butch Berry, who was an assistant offensive line coach, went over to the Denver Broncos. Wes Welker obviously going to the Dolphins today. John Embry leaving the team to take a role with the Dolphins eventually. That's who he signed with. He's going to have the same job there. And then they also lost Richard Hightower to the Bears. So all the losses that they've had so far have been special teams or on offense, and they do have Anthony Lynn coming in. Are there any concerns for you with where the coaching staff kind of sits currently?
No, no, because here's the thing, twofold, right? One, Turner's still here. Two, Kosirik's still here. Three, Shanahan's still here, and four, D'Amico Ryan's still here, and those are the core for me. And so I think as long as you have that core, you can build around that. But also, the 49ers are telling you something. If they're allowing a coach to leave to go somewhere else for the same exact job, that means that they're willing to let them walk, right? Because they can block that. That's a league rule. If they're not getting a promotion, you can block them from going if
Mm-hmm.
they're taking the same job. So the fact that they didn't block guys like a Wes Welker or an Embry, we know what happened there. Hightower, that tells you that they're willing to let these guys walk and go in a different direction, or they were planning on doing so anyway. So for me, I'm really not too worried about it at all. I think they're going to be fine. I think Lynn was a fantastic hire. I think bringing in somebody who hasn't been under Shanahan for a long period of time, maybe somebody that would be willing to hold him accountable or just bring in different ideas. There's nothing wrong with that. And so I actually like what's happened thus far. I would prefer for sure that it stays intact, especially when you're winning. But I'm not too worried about what's been lost because the 49ers told me that they're not worried by what's been lost by not blocking these guys from leaving.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that. When you look at it, you have Hightower is probably going to get fired. That's I think, and that's why they just let him walk. Embry, we know what happened there. They let him go. Let him. They told him it was going to be a pay cut. And he moved on his own. Butch Berry, that's a promotion for him, and it's kind of a promotion
Yes.
for the other assistant offensive line coach as well. So it's not that they've lost anything big. I think the Welker one might be a little bit of a tough one. I mean, I think you're probably right. They feel like they have somebody either in house or on their mind already that they want to fill in that role with. And on top of that, Walker's from Miami. He played for the Dolphins before he went to New England. The guy wants to go home. Let him go home. I mean, at some point, right? And so that plays into it as well. And I like the hiring of Anthony Lynn. It's going to be interesting to see what else they do. But the Lynn hiring is a good one. He's basically come in and he's taking Mike McDaniel's role with the 49ers. He might not be labeled as the offensive coordinator, but he's going to be doing what Mike McDaniel did. He's going to be coordinating the run game, and that there's been no official statement of that, but seems like that's a natural transition for him here. And he's done a pretty good job in the run game as throughout his career as a run coach and offensive coordinator and head coach when he was with the Chargers there. And he's new to Shanahan in terms of working with Kyle, but he's been around the Shanahans for quite a while. That's how he got his start. He got to start as he played for the 49ers, but then he had those 3 years with the Broncos, and then the Broncos are the ones that got him into the coaching ranks. So he's been around, and that's one of the things I've noticed with Kyle Shanahan is that he seems to stick with guys who he's familiar with. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. And like I said, the Lynn one to me is something that I'm excited about. I know that he had his little bit of an issue there as a head coach and maybe didn't hack it. And it sounds like he wasn't the best fit over with Detroit, but he got the run game going over there. Like they were able to run the football in Detroit, which is something you had not seen for many, many years over there. So he does bring that to the table for sure. And I also think that, whenever you have a guy who's been a head coach and can take some of those responsibilities away from Shanahan, somebody that Shanahan can go to and trust, I think that's always a good thing because that's one of the things that I knocked Shanahan, mid-season. I said, this is one of those things that to me, I think Shanahan has too much on his plate. And I feel like now having a guy like Lynn there, that's a perfect guy to have there and take some of that off of his plate so that he can, call the game and do what he needs to do.
Yeah, it's it'll be interesting to see. The other piece with that is that he worked with Josh Herbert, right? That was Justin Herbert, excuse me, not Josh.
Yes, Justin Herbert.
Justin Herbert, and he was the rookie of the year in 2020. So he's shown the ability to work with quarterbacks, young quarterbacks, and at least in that stint there, he had a really good year with Tyrod Taylor. So there's definitely some really good things about him to get excited about. And anytime you can add a guy who's been a head coach in the league, it's been around as long as he has, and then you start to see kind of the man who he is with some of the other things that I've seen on social media, and like Barry Baller put out a couple of things on Twitter. And that was pretty interesting to see some of the things that he's gone through and the type of person that he is outside of the football piece.
Yeah,
one other
absolutely.
piece, one other piece, and I'm not sure if you've heard about this, but the Big 25 put it up in the comments, and I saw this about an hour ago. Vic Fangio apparently was in town today, talking to John Lynch, and according to a reporter from out in the Denver area, he says that Fangio was out here talking with the 49ers about possibly being an advisor with them this year. Uh, I'm not sure if you'd heard that before, and if so or not, what would your thoughts be?
I hadn't heard that. I mean, I don't know what that role means or, or what being an advisor means, but um, again, this is another guy with a great mind who has just come off of being a head coach himself. I think the more guys, the more brain trust you get in the building, smart guys, that's never a bad thing. So no, I mean, if that's the case, I would absolutely look at that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. From what I understand, it's nothing official. Like I said, it was just one person out in Denver who mentioned, but he's close to the Broncos, and he was actually one who had mentioned the trade for um,
Emmanuel
Emmanuel
Sanders.
Sanders back in 2019 before it went down. So he seems to be pretty tight end with what's going on in Denver. So if he comes out here and you have Vic Fangio to as another voice in the room with D'Amico Ryans, that's a good thing. For me, it's an interesting piece because Vic Fangio's defenses are much different than what we've seen with the 49ers over the time that Kyle Shanahan's been here. They've been a 4-3 Seattle kind of scheme. They did a little bit more cover two this year, and that could be something maybe they're leaning towards, is maybe doing a little more cover two. And that's, we saw them running that. And, it would be interesting to see the changes in the defense with a guy like Fangio coming in, and I know part of it is people are saying, Ryans is the guy who was up for a head coaching job already after 1 year. So bringing Fangio in gets him in the building, and then hopefully you can keep him if you move on. And uh, so that kind of stuff, kind of building their bench like they've done such a good job of before. So that'd be an interesting one to keep an eye on. Vic Fangio
Yeah, I mean
with the
that would be
49ers.
interesting because Fangio, I mean, complete opposite philosophies here that we're talking about. Like they couldn't really be more opposite, but it does make things interesting for sure. I just did a breakdown on a draft prospect, Nick Bonito, and what I like, there was a lot that I liked about him, but one of the things that concerned me is he looked more like a 3-4 outside linebacker. He played standing up a majority of the time, and I'm like, well, he's extremely versatile. I feel like they could make it work. Well, now you bring in a guy like Fangio, and I'm like, okay, well, they really could make players like that work, right? Like they could figure it out one way or another. So that's a really interesting possible hire there.
Yeah, it'd be kind of cool to see. I think he's a pretty smart guy, and he's been pretty successful where he's been as a coordinator. And I think it'd be a good hire for the 49ers to get him in the building if they could.
Yeah,
Moving
for sure.
off of
Wasn't there talks about him going to Miami possibly?
uh, there was Miami. There was another position. There was another location. I know that they talked. They brought him in for an interview. I think maybe it was Minnesota. I think he might have been brought in Minnesota as well. But if the 49ers can maybe steal one back and not let him get to Miami, that'd be a good thing.
Yeah,
I,
yeah,
I,
that'd
I,
be a very
yeah, I
good
just
thing.
got done saying I really like Mike McDaniel, but then he's taking coaches away from the 49ers. Maybe I don't like him so much.
Right.
Kind of sliding off of the coaching carousel, the 49ers go into this offseason with 33 free agents and not a whole lot of cap room, but they're going to get there. I think there's some restructures that are going to have to happen and to help them out there, because right now they're over the cap by about $5 million with the 44 players signed, and 11 of those are guys who we wouldn't expect to see on the team. So by March 16th, they have to be under the salary cap. Their top 51 salaries are what would count against it. Kind of looking at the 33 free agents that the 49ers have, and let's try to focus only on the unrestricted free agents, because there's exclusive rights free agents who we know are going to come back. There's 5 of those, and then there's 4 restricted free agents probably will be coming back. They probably won't tender them at the level which uh, they'll probably just try to re-sign those guys without tendering them, because you're looking at tenders of anywhere from $2 to $5 million. And we've seen them be able to get deals done with guys without having to go that route. But as far as your unrestricted free agents that the 49ers have currently, who would be your top 5 re-signings as far as priority goes?
Well, I'm definitely gonna answer the question, and I'll stay true to the rules with the unrestricted free agents. But two things I want to bring up first, and the first one is I feel like the core of this team is really intact. And so if the 49ers, I trust the brain trust right now of this team. I really do. They're entering season 6 of doing this. And with that core being intact, if they just said, hey, we don't care to bring anybody back, like I would trust it. I would listen to it, right? I don't think they're going to do that. And I think they're going to prioritize some guys, and I'll talk about them in a second. But I'm all in on whatever they decide to do. I'll definitely talk about it and pick it apart for sure. But I really do trust what they have going on. But priority number one for me is, before we even get to that, is working out a deal with Debo. And the reason that I say that is because I really feel like time is of the essence with Debo Samuel, because he's going to demand a lot of money. Let's say 4-year 100 mil, 5-year 125 mil, 60 guaranteed, or whatever that number is. They have to get that figured out. And the reason that they have to get it figured out is because other receivers are coming up, and you want to be the first one in to get that deal done so that other people can come in and basically overpay their receivers. The longer you wait, if you let a Devontae Adams deal fall, or some of these other guys' deals fall, AJ Brown, what have you, then you're going to overpay. So you have to get that deal done first to save yourself some money, because making him the highest paid receiver now means in 2 years he's the 10th or 12th highest paid receiver. But if you wait, that means some of those dominoes are falling and you're just spending wasted money. So to me, that should be priority number one, so that you can have more money to play with and know what that looks like. when you go into our own unrestricted free agents. And I look at guys, I think Laken Tomlinson has to be a guy for sure. You know, Tart possibly. I go back and forth on him, but unless you have some sort of better option, I mean, he's got to be a guy. Um, you know, outside of that, I look at DJ Jones. And really, for me, those are like the three that I'm putting a staple on. I can go to five, but like those are the three for me that I'm like, I want to have DJ Jones, Lake and Tomlinson for sure. And then I'm back and forth on Tart. But he would probably be my number three guy that I would just love to have come back if I have to choose a third and then, you know, beyond that.
Yeah, and we'll start off real quick. I'll follow up with you from where you're saying as far as Debo Samuel is. That's definitely a deal that I think the 49ers are going to try to get done this year. If and it's going to be costly. I don't think I've seen. I think I saw somebody put out like $19.5 million in average annual value for Debo Samuel. I don't think I think that number's low. I think he's going to be over 20 million. I think you're looking at more in like the $23 million range probably by the time it's all said and done. Um, and that's something that's completely doable with the salary cap going up. And I think what you're going to see with a guy like Debo Samuel, $23 million is puts him at the top of the average annual value range. Really, when you look at the average annual value, they're basing it off of the most recent contract. So for like example, DeAndre Hopkins, when you look at his, it says 27 and a half or just under 27 and a half. But the reason for that is because he had the new 54 year million for 2 years. It kind of throws his numbers off. He never has a cap. He only has 1 year, I think, where he even has a cap hit that's close to 27 million. So when you look at like a Debo Samuel, if you can get him for 23 million a year, I think that puts them right around the top of the scale. It's going to be probably, with where they are right now, it's probably going to be a 5 year deal, which allows them to stretch it out. I think they're going to want to they're going to, this deal here and the Nick Bosa deal, I think you're going to see the Frontiers structuring them similar to what they did with Fred Warner. I think Fred Warner's structure is what you're going to see. And if they can do that with Debo, it fits really well for them this year to get it done because they can get I think his salary cap hit is about 4.5 million. And I feel pretty confident that they can get him done, get him the money that he wants, and be able to have a cap hit this year that's going to be close to that same number. And that would be huge for the 49ers with the situation that they're in. So, yeah, Debo Samuel is definitely, number one, although he's not a re-signing in terms of what we're talking about here. So if we look at the guys who are not going to be on the team, and for me, it starts with DJ Jones. I think DJ Jones is kind of number one. I think you mentioned him. I think he's one of the top guys. He only played about 51% of the snaps this year, but this is the first time in his career he's made it through a season healthy for 17 weeks for the full season. He played the most snaps of his career. Obviously makes sense, even though the percentage was down. Career high in tackles and tackles for loss and all that kind of good stuff. And if you look at the over the cap numbers, they're saying his contract value is only about 5.5 million, right in that ballpark, which is only a couple million more than what he's getting now. That's a no brainer for the 49ers if those numbers are what come out, right? Um, beyond DJ Jones, you have Jaquowski Tart. I think he's got to be one of those guys that you're looking at. Tart's a really good safety. My concern with him is health. I think other teams are going to look at him and be concerned with his health. I think that's going to be what helps keep him down. He played on a minimum deal, but if you can get him back for 3 million or 2.5 million, which is around what over the cap has him valued at, boom, you do it. Same thing with Laken Tomlinson. Really, Laken Tomlinson's a guy who I saw a comment over here. What if somebody throws $12 million at him? Well, if somebody's going to pay Laken Tomlinson at 30 years old $12 million on a multi-year deal, you tell him thank you for being a 49er and go get it because he's not worth that much money. But I think Laken Tomlinson's one that you want to try to bring back. You didn't mention these two guys, but I'm going to throw them in there, even though I said five. I'm going to make these guys like one, and that's I think Arden Key and Jordan Willis combined are two guys that you need to bring back. The issue there with that is Key was so inexpensive. And he kind of blew up. Um, Over the cap has him valued at just under $4 million. I think 3.7. I think it's doable. That's about the same number that Kerry Hyder got from Seattle. But if you can bring him in and bring in Willis, because Willis is even lower because he didn't play that much. Those two guys are provide you great depth on the defensive line. And then the one name that you didn't mention that most people haven't is I really think the 49ers need to find a way to bring back Raheem Mostert if they can. I think if Raheem Mostert had been with the 49ers and was healthy this year, obviously they tried to keep him healthy, but he wasn't healthy. But if Raheem Mostert had been healthy this year, uh, Deebo Samuel would have been very close to the numbers that Jerry Rice put up early in his career when he put up over 1,600 yards. He was at 1,000 yards, just under 1,000 yards week 10. He was averaging 97 yards a game, so he was on pace to put up some huge numbers. So Raheem, but
Yeah,
you need the explosiveness. That's why Mostert's so important.
no, I definitely see why Mostert would be a key for you, and he is for a lot of people because the reason Debo was in the backfield so much is because they didn't have that explosion. And once you lose Mostert, you had to find it somewhere, and that became Debo. I actually have a free agent that I want them to chase, and in doing so, that they would have to forego Mostert. So that's why I say that. And then also Mostert, um, to me, it's just the injuries. I just can't trust him. I mean, the guy had 2 carries last year and was done. I just him and Verrett, and that's why I say I'm iffy on Tart. I lean towards bringing Tart back out of any of them, more so, but those guys, like it's just at some point you just got to say it's not going to work. I'm sorry, it's just not. You can't stay healthy, and we need these roster spots to groom guys that are going to be here and give us a better chance of being healthy. So that's why I would say no to Mostert, but I completely like the reasoning is right. I understand exactly why you would bring back a Mostert. And at the end of the day, I wouldn't necessarily hate it. I just personally would say no to it.
Yeah, and I understand the opposite side. I understand both sides of the whole Mostert deal. The thing for me is that if you can bring him in on a minimum kind of a deal, under 3 million, because he was at 3.5 million this year, but if you can bring him in at 3 or less, he provides a lot of value to you. And your thought process there is that you're not bringing him in to be the starter. You're not bringing him in to be the guy. You're bringing him in to be the explosive piece that comes in and really just kind of handles the carries that you've been giving to Deebo Samuel, because you don't want him taking those hits, especially when you make him a $23+ million wide receiver, which is what he deserves. So let me know the name that you were thinking of as far as the free agent. I know that's not what we're talking here, but it kind of
Yeah.
goes along with the discussion.
Cordero Patterson. He's a guy that I
Okay.
wanted them to chase hard last year. I know that he would be more money, but he also solves the special teams problem, much healthier, and can do all those things that we would need. And I just look at him and Debo on the field together and go, I don't know how you stop that. I don't.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not as big on. I do like Cordero Patterson, and if you could bring him in as a say like your fourth or fifth wide receiver, then you go ahead and do it because you can use him in multiple ways. But I wouldn't be looking to bring him in to be the running back to in that role. I don't think he's as good as Debo is at that. I mean, that's not saying a whole lot because I think Debo Samuel is probably one of the best players in the NFL,
Yeah, for
bar
sure.
none. But I think I don't think that's you bring him in to do those kind of things, but you're not bringing him in at the expense of having a running back that can be explosive for you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think like eight carries a game. I think he can be pretty explosive. I don't know. I think he can do that role. I really do.
Who's that? Patterson?
Patterson, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and like Barry Baller says, just sprinkle Mostert. Stop trying to make him work hard. Absolutely,
For
that's the
sure.
that's
Eight
the thought
carries a
process.
game, right? Like that would be ideal. You're getting 6 to 10 carries a game, depending on scenarios, and
Yeah,
that's it. And then when the playoffs come, we're gonna bump that up. We're gonna move you up to 12, kind of like what they did with Debo, right? Like they started to work Debo in even more. Hey, we only got a few games left. This season's almost over. Like we're going all in. You're gonna get some touches now, bud. So get ready for it. Same thing with Mostert. I mean, you kind of just let him get up there, get those calluses on those bones and get that strength in. And then once that postseason starts, like, all right, now you're touching it 15 times a game. Like, figure it out.
Yeah, yeah, and you're just exactly you're looking for 8 to 12 touches a game. That's it. You're not
Mhm.
looking to use him a lot because he can catch the ball pretty well in the backfield as well. There's a lot of things that there's a lot of value that he brings to the table, and I just have a feeling he's probably going to somebody's going to give him more money than the 49ers are going to offer him. But if there's a way that they can bring him back, that'd be fantastic. I like your Patterson thing too. That's a guy who I Cordero Patterson is a player who I think would be a good fit for the 49ers. So we'll see where that goes. And we're starting to run out of time, but I do want to move on to another topic unless you had one more thing you wanted to say there.
No, I mean, I think, with Patterson, I'll just throw this out real quick. I was just looking at his numbers. They overutilized him in the run game. It's kind of like what happened with Debo down the stretch. It's like you kind of figured out what was going to happen. Every time he was back there, he was going to get the ball. But with Patterson being back there, like, he doesn't necessarily have to get the ball. Like, you can kind of disguise it a little bit more. But he was very explosive early on. He ended up with 153 carries. Like, that's a lot. I don't want him to be there. I want him to be closer to 100, then be your special teams guy. And then if Debo goes down, kind of fill in there for that role as well. So, like, that's how I envision Patterson being. But 153 carries would be way more than what I would want to give him. And I think Atlanta overutilized him a bit.
Oh yeah, they totally did because they didn't really have a whole lot over there, and they found something that was working and they just stuck with it, and
Yeah.
uh, and they just didn't have the other pieces around them to kind of help them out. But um, as far as the draft coming up, there's definitely one receiver in particular that the 49ers fans really have been enamored with, and 49ers fans do this. Fans across the NFL do this with players, not just the 49er fans, but Christian Watson, wide receiver out of North Dakota State. And you'd want to talk a little bit about him. And to me, he looks like a good player. It sure, seemed like he was having a heck of a Senior Bowl, and his film at North Dakota State looks pretty good. 49ers are going to have a need for a wide receiver. I just don't know if they need to draft one when Watson's going to be around. But what were your thoughts on Watson there?
Yeah, I think Watson's gonna be a fine player, and I, my stance on him is much like my stance on Fields. It's not that I don't necessarily like the player. Um, Rashad, we actually just talked about it a few minutes ago, the Wes Welker thing. But yeah, so as far as Christian Watson goes, like, I think he's gonna be a fine player. Just, I thought Fields would be fine, but I just think that there's more pressing needs, and it's funny how, to me, it's just funny to see how groupthink starts around these things.
Mm-hmm.
One person that carries a bunch of clout, and 49ers Twitter throws out a name, and now everybody wants him, and now he's the hot commodity, and we got to go get him. And we're making cases as to why it has to happen. And look at Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. It could be the same thing. Like, these are the things that people are saying. So I just want to pump the brakes a little bit. Like, Watson's going to be a fine player. I think he really could do some cool things in this league. I wouldn't mind having him, especially if they do get a good pick for Jimmy, a second or a third. If he's there in the third round, I'm cool with that. Uh, if that's what they decide to do. But let's say he's a second round pick. If you only have 1 second round pick, I don't think that that's the route you go with. And I do believe that this offense needs a little juice. The fact that they only scored, just under 18 points a game in the playoffs is a testament to that. But I think the juice is Trey Lance. Like, that's the juice. You don't have to then go get more. It's there. So for me, let's just pump the brakes a little bit. Like, he's not a generational talent. I'm not saying he can't be. Who knows? You never know with these guys, but he's not looked at in the same way that Jamar Chase was looked at coming out of college. Jamar Chase was pegged to be every bit as good as he's been, and he's been better somehow than that. So, Christian Watson may be a fine player, but I highly doubt he's going to be that type of player, especially immediately. And I think also, do we really expect the 49ers can feed this many guys? I mean, let's not forget they already have two all-pro pass catchers, Debo Samuel, George Kittle, right? And you
Mm-hmm.
have a very good player in Ayuk, who I understand that Christian Watson and Lance may have some rapport built there, and it would be cool to watch. But this is the second offseason in a row now that the 49ers, Trey Lance and Ayuk are working together. So I think they're going to have plenty of rapport as well. So I just say pump the brakes on guys like Christian Watson, and just understand it's most likely not going to happen. So don't get your hearts up on it.
Yeah, I agree with you there. The whole group think is definitely a part of it. We saw that in huge effect when it came to the quarterbacks last year. It
Mm-hmm.
was, I mean, it got really nasty around Justin Fields,
Yeah, I did.
and it was really odd for a guy who wasn't even on the team. The way that people looked at that situation and how just angry they'd get if you didn't like him, and the things that you were called if you were not a Justin Fields fan
So bizarre, man.
was quite interesting. And there were times I'm like, what are you talking about? Just because Mac Jones is better than him. I'm sorry if you think Justin Fields is better. you know I, I'm not racist. I like I like my second favorite is Trey Lance. I mean, come on. I mean,
Oh my gosh.
maybe there's something that I don't know. I mean, that was one of the main things, right? I mean, I don't know. I don't.
That's bad. I can't believe that was even thrown. Anyways, go ahead.
It was something that was definitely talked about, and quite a bit. And it'll be interesting to see Christian Watson's a really good receiver. I've liked what I've seen. If he's there in the third or fourth round and the 49ers decide that they want to bring him on to be their fourth receiver or to compete with Juwan Jennings for the third receiver role, I'm not going to be angry about it. I'm just not going to be calling for him either. That's one of the interesting things with the 49ers position where they are in the draft right now, period. You're not going to see the 49ers drafting, right? If nothing changes, they're not going to be drafting until 61.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many things that it's really zeroing in on anybody at this point is really crazy to me. We're only a month into this thing. We still have a long way to go in this process, and uh, I haven't even gotten into looking at the draft at this point.
Yeah, I just started. I mean, I know very few names, and it's fun. I love this time of year. I think not everybody geeks out on it, but I certainly do. And so I love the talk, but to fall in love with the guy who's not even a top three position in need for this team at this point, and say that we must get this guy already is like, whoa, can we chill a little bit? Like this thing just
Yeah.
started.
Well, and the other piece that you mentioned here when it comes to Watson and that the reason they like him so much is because of the connection that he has presumed with Trey Lance from the two of them playing together 2 years ago. They played one
Yep.
season in 2019. We're now going into 2022. I mean, uh,
Right.
so what have you around that? But I know, like you said, you've got Debo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle. I think Juwan Jennings is a pretty darn good guy, receiver. The 49ers have weapons on the offensive side of the ball, and they just need a
And they
quarterback that.
didn't even utilize the running backs. I mean, Mitchell's a good receiver out of the backfield. I mean, we saw it show up against the Rams. Like he can be a weapon out there. So yeah, there's plenty of weapons on this team.
No, you're right. There are a lot of them, and I would say if you look at like the Rams, you look at some of these the teams that have really explosive, the Bengals, for example, they spent a lot of capital on their receiver core,
Mm-hmm.
and it's paid off. They're in the Super Bowl. The Rams went about it a whole different way. They spent a lot of capital on not in the draft, but using their draft picks to get proven guys. And I remember at the beginning of the year that everybody was telling me that the Rams weren't going to be here because they were giving up all their on these guys. And here we are, and it'll be fun. And like Barry Baller says over here, he started off with scouting wide receivers first, and if they don't draft Romeo Doubs, whatever, riot. I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he's making that up. She's probably laughing right now that we're talking about it because that's the kind of guy that he is. So, but no, I think the 49ers. What I would like to see is the 49ers. They need to get a center. They need to get some pass rush. I think they need to work on safety and maybe another
Nickel
corner.
corner. Yep.
Yeah, a nickel corner. Unless they feel like maybe some competition for Diamond Lenore. I think that's the role that they kind of envisioned in when they drafted Lenore in the fifth round. Um, so and the other thing too, when we talk about this, is it's not like last year. Last year we knew that they were going quarterback, especially when they traded up to three.
Right.
This year, we're not going to know, and plus, you have free agency before the draft. I mean, we don't even know what their needs are going to be when the draft comes yet. It'll be so to say that they need to get this guy. Um, no, that's just like Jesse said. Let's pump the brakes a little bit on that one.
Just a little bit for sure. But it is a fun time of year. Like I said, I geek out on this stuff, and I'm just excited to dive deep into these prospects and have a little bit of fun, man. Fall. I mean, I'm gonna do the same thing. There's gonna be a couple players that I'm just gonna want and pound the table for, and we'll see if I'm lucky like I was last year with being right about Lance. I doubt it. I doubt I can hit gold 2 years in a row, but maybe I will.
You might, yeah. You're definitely all over Lance, and it's funny because I didn't like Lance at first, and then I rewatched him after the trade and liked him, and saw some things that I missed the first time around, and uh, it's always a fun process to go through. We're getting a lot later start on it this year than we did
Yeah.
last year, but it's going to be fun to dig into. And we have the Super Bowl coming up on Sunday, and I know you're not too excited about it. I could really care less as well, but there is a big game coming up on Sunday. Who's going to win?
I
Who do you
think the
want to win?
Rams are. I honestly, I would prefer that Burrow does it. I think it'd be a cool story. I do have a friend that's a Bengals fan, so just for that reason, and that franchise has been through a ton. So, yeah, I'm gonna root for the Bengals, but I find very few ways that they win that game. I just think the Rams are too complete and too good, and it's his second time here for a lot of those guys, and I think that they're primed to make a run here. The 49ers were the monkey on their back, and they pulled it clean off. So I think they're going to play very, very free here.
I'm interested in this game from the standpoint that both these guys, I think they all come from the same tree, very similar with each other. They're familiar with what they each do. It's going to be I think that's going to be fun to watch. I think the Bengals have shown themselves to be a team that they've shown themselves to be a pretty darn good team. I mean, they fought really tough with the 49ers, and the 49ers were the only team in the NFC West that played them this year because of the new scheduling that they have up. And I'm definitely going to be pulling for the Bengals to win. I'd rather see the Bengals win their first Super Bowl than the Rams win one. You know, I'm an old school 49er fan from the old days when the Rams were the team that you didn't like.
Mm-hmm.
The Seahawk hate is more 2011 ish. But the Rams are the team that have always been, as far as the time that I've been around the 49ers, they've been the team that was the rival. And I don't want to see the Rams win. I see too many people wearing Rams stuff around since I got back from the game down in Los Angeles. I don't want to see any more of that stuff.
Yeah, that's the way it always works. But yeah, I agree with you. I don't want to see the Rams win, and I think it would be a cool story for the Bengals to win for sure.
Yeah, how the Bengals win is the Bengals just don't drop the interception from Matthew Stafford.
Oh my gosh. Hey, well, the 49ers were 3-1 against these teams. Does that mean that they get a trophy?
Yeah, I saw somebody that's right. They should. At least maybe like a little mini Lombardi that they can
Yeah.
like participation kind of a trophy,
Yeah.
something like that.
Quest for 6.5 next year. We're
there,
at 5.5 now.
there you go. Yeah, and like Jay Mills says, Bengals and 49ers have so many ties historically, and it would have been a lot of fun. That was
Yeah, would have.
being in SoFi, and that game was on the screen as the 49ers were warming up. The 49ers fans were definitely rooting for the Bengals in that game, and there was a lot of cheers when the Bengals won. And it's really a rough finish for the 49ers, and that they don't get to feast the Bengals, because I've said so many times throughout the year that this team reminded me of the '88 team, who then went on to win the Super Bowl against the Bengals. So
That
it
would
would
have
have
been
been
crazy.
yeah, it would have been a great way to finish the year off. So anyway, was there anything else that you wanted to say, or are we going to wrap this thing up for tonight?
Yeah, let's wrap it up. Come over to my channel in 20 minutes, Last Second Sports. We're going to continue some of this conversation, me and my co-host. So tune in over there. Appreciate y'all, and make sure you subscribe over here and give Jack some love.
Yeah, get over to Last Second Sports, like all their stuff, and subscribe to them. But if you want to say thanks for joining the Hammer and Nail show tonight, if you like what you see, please hit that like button. If you're not already subscribed, do that. Hit that little bell so that you're always notified when we go live, so you don't miss any of the shows. And beyond that, just thank you very much, and have a great Thursday. I'll be back tomorrow with another show on my channel tomorrow afternoon. So keep your eyes tuned. And other than that, have a great Thursday night, everybody. Take care.